Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Everyday Heroes podcast. I want to share with you an amazing guest speaker because I don't know if you've had this happen to you before, but like with all kids, they're looking for a backyard that's going to serve their needs, right? They've all got needs, they've all got their thing going on. They need to be able to express themselves, they need to be able to regulate themselves. And if they can't do that in their home, things can get a little bit crazy, right? And look, this is a controversial topic. Not everyone wants their kids to be on screens. Some people use screens to regulate. Whatever works for you and your family, I am a-okay with. Like, I'm not opposed either which way. But I love the idea of having kids get out into nature, getting out into their backyards, to use that as another sensory space, another extension of what the house can be. So today I have the wonderful Jena. She founded a company called N is for Nature Play, and she's a landscape architect, and she designs these amazing backyards to create another sensory space for our children to play in. So Jena, welcome to the Everyday Heroes podcast.
Natalie, thanks so much for having me on. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So can you just walk us through a little bit around what you do? What does your work entail, and how can we better share it with our audience?
Yeah, awesome. So for a long time now, like 25 years, I've been designing children's sensory-based, nature-filled play and learning spaces. So these are like sensory gardens and nature play areas. There's some amazing nature play areas in Australia. Um, uh, Green schoolyards and outdoor classrooms, backyards that are tailored to the kids in that home. So I will say nature play looks different for every backyard space, for every nature play area that I work with. But these spaces are so incredibly important for the kids that play and learn there, because it connects them with nature. It helps them self-regulate their nervous system, brain development, physical development, family connection, and so many beautiful things.
Yes, I love that. Because like, it was funny, we were just talking about it before we jumped on air, and I remember speaking to an OT of my son's and saying, like, what can I do in the backyard? Like, how can I use this space as another way of, helping him regulate? And we got the stock standard, the swing, a bit of here, but like, it was very limited in what I could offer and what I could put together. So is this where you come in and you sort of look at the space and go and look at the child's needs and say, okay, well, I think that, Billy would do really well with ABC, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually start with Billy first. That your child is the most important piece, right? And some of the questions that I like to ask the parents and the children, if they're up for it, is, what do they love to do? And the
Yeah.
parents are the experts on the kids, so they can rattle off so many different things that their child loves to do. The second question I ask are, what are, if there are, any sensory sensitivities
Yes.
or differences? Because the design of the space is meant to support that child's unique nervous system and
Yes.
how their senses are processing that environment. And that's why I say these spaces look different for every child and family that I work with.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
And so it does go beyond. You can get really creative. I mean, I will say OTs, occupational therapists, I have learned the most about the work that I do by collaborating with OTs. So I really value their opinion. But you can get really creative with what you can provide kids in your backyard, from mud kitchens and sensory paths and plantings and cozy spaces. And I can share all sorts of different ideas with your parents.
Yes. And so, not like, obviously, coming from the States and from what I see on TV, right? There, you've got these huge houses with these even bigger backyards.
Yeah.
Now, that is not necessarily the case in where I am, we're in Melbourne, Australia. So especially when you're living in a city, you've got like a 5x4, maybe, backyard, or maybe you're living in an apartment where there's not a lot of space. Are you able to design things that work in smaller spaces, or are you like, no, this is not really going to work?
No. I love that you asked that question because it's so important. Yes, you can bring in nature play to any space that you have, however big or small, whether it's indoor or out. So an example, one of my favorite sensory play features is a cozy space. And that's basically like a child-sized nook. Could be a fort. If it's indoor, it might be a pillow fort or a blanket fort. If it's outside, it might be a little garden teepee or something. But you can create those indoors or outdoors, on a balcony, wherever you have. So open the windows, have a little herb garden on your deck or your patio or your balcony. And there's lots of different ways to bring in nature to your space.
Yes, I love that so much. So we often talk about the five senses that we have, right? We already know what the five
Mm-hmm.
senses are, but you're saying that that children have actually more than five. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's actually 8 senses that I work with. So there's the classic 5: sight, touch, taste, smell, and sound. There's 2 movement-based systems, and I can explain
Mm,
what those are really briefly. So one is the vestibular system, and
yes.
it's located in our inner ear, and it has to
Mhm.
do with our understanding of where we're at relative to gravity. Like, are we upside down? Are we right side up? Or are we sideways? And so activities like swinging and spinning and running and crawling and rolling and all of these things are vestibular activities that feed that system, that give a child a better sense of where they're at in space, and they're able to develop a real great body confidence when they can move in all sorts of different ways. And then the next movement based system is the proprioceptive system, or proprioception, which has to do with a couple things. It's generally our body awareness sense, like where we're at relative to the things around us, and where our limbs are at relative to the rest of us. And it also has to do with the use of force to do an activity. So an example I always give is, I'm really thirsty. I've got a paper cup of water in front of me. And so my brain will communicate to my joints and muscles all the way down to my fingertips how much pressure my hands need to pick up that paper cup without squishing it or without letting it slide through my fingers. And so proprioceptive activities are big body movements like climbing and balancing, but they're also like fine motor skills like tying your shoes or using a zipper or playing with a busy board or something like that. And so lots of different activities like gardening, using a rake or hand tools, balancing on some logs or some boulders. So many activities feed a child's proprioceptive system.
Yeah.
And it's so very important. And then the 8th sense is called interoception, and it's a really interesting one. And I'm still wrapping my mind around it
Yeah.
because it's a fully internal sense.
Yes.
Yes, it has to do with like our internal sensations of hunger and thirst and pain and all of these things, feeling our own heartbeat on the inside. It also answers the question, how do I feel? And so our emotions are very tied to this sense. It's where our emotions come from. So an environment that has a social setting might feel different to a neurotypical child than it does a neurodiverse child. A neurotypical child that can understand so different social situations or can handle a crowd, their interoception system is going to feel differently about that space than a child who gets anxious in a crowd.
Of course, yeah, definitely. And that I think that interoception is really a more new term that is coming onto the scene, and
Yeah,
we're hearing a lot more about it. But it makes complete sense. Like if you
yeah,
don't know that you need to go to the toilet, and you
yeah,
can't feel that sensation, that's gonna cause some issues, right? So very much with the pain, or like you said, like feeling that heartbeat, is there's
yeah,
so many things to it. But I love that you've raised that, because they play such an important role in how we're showing up. Like all
yeah,
of those things. Like it's not just walking into maybe you're walking into a cafe and as an autistic child and like smelling all of those smells, and you're like, oh, that's a bit overwhelming, or that
mhm,
sound is a bit overwhelming. That interoception, that proprioception, that vestibular plays such a big role as well.
yes.
So in terms of environment, when I think you touched on it as well, we touched on it in terms of the environment really calming a nervous system. What do we need to do as parents, like in a backyard
Mm.
setting? What do we need to have in order to really serve our children in the best way possible?
Yeah. Again, it's going to depend on your child.
Yeah.
So really think about their what they love to do, and if they have any sensory sensitivities, and you can
Mhm.
tailor that space. But there's some generalities that I can offer. One is have access to nature, and it doesn't have to be big fancy garden spaces. It
Yeah.
can be a tree or some plantings or an edible garden or some pots with herbs in it.
Yeah.
It can be as simple or as complex as you want. So access to nature is really important so that it's there when they want to go explore it. The second, I would say, I mentioned cozy spaces before,
Yeah.
and a cozy space is a universally beneficial space for any and every child on this planet. And so, again, a cozy space is that intimate space where a child can feel like their back is protected and also be able to view out of what's happening in their environment. There's actually, it's called the prospect and refuge theory. There's actually a sociological, psychological theory behind this need. Yeah, it goes back way in our DNA about our need to be able to survey our surroundings while feel protected at our back. All kids, all adults need this in their lives, like a cozy space. And so, again, for your child, it could be a fort, it could be a bean teepee, it could be a little nook carved out in a plantings under a tree. It could be very, very simple. Um, so that those two things right there, add more nature and add a cozy space, you're going to be off on a great start, because in a cozy space, a child can do a lot of different things: de-stress, self-regulate. They
Yeah.
can take some of their favorite activities out and do it there. Well, if you have a garden space, if a raised bed or two, you can be gardening. They could be in their cozy space. When they feel like it, they can come help you garden. And if you have got
Yes.
some tools there, they can get involved. And then there's edible garden spaces are also one of my favorite things, because there's so much that happens in an edible garden. They're learning great life skills. They're connecting with nature. They're also, importantly, they turn into the nurturer. So often, kids are the ones being taken care of,
Yeah.
but in an edible garden space, they're the ones doing the caring, right? They're
Yeah.
planting the seeds. They're watering it. They're tending to it. They're watching the plant grow. They're invested in this. And then when the plant has fruits or flowers or whatever, they can get into that experience. They can eat the berries or the fruits. They can share it. And so it's so empowering, and it gives such great self-confidence to kids when they are in the role of the nurturer, and edible gardens provide that.
I love that so much because as little humans, they want to care for something. You know, we see it often with, whether it's boys or girls, like looking after their little sibling or looking after their teddies or, whatever it is. I think that it's innate in us to want to look after each other and to be proud of what we've done. We've created, we've grown this thing.
Yeah.
And now, and we can be so proud of something because often, a lot of the times, which is truly heartbreaking, that it seems to be with autistic kids, we're always in the deficit, right? We're always like looking at the lack, but like in this space,
Mhm.
we can look at like what you have accomplished and what you've achieved and to really
Yeah.
celebrate that.
Absolutely. And for your parents who do live in apartments, you can take little paper cups and do the same thing. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
in an outdoor garden space. You can do
Hmm.
it in your kitchen window.
Yeah.
So it can be very, very simple, and it can be indoors, even with edible gardens.
Yes, I love that. Um, so we were talking on different sensory sensitivities. With that, um, can you just share, like, do you have like an example that you could possibly share where
Mm.
maybe, I'm just totally pulling this out of my backside now, but like, if we had Billy who was really, maybe he's autistic, he's ADHD, he's got a lot of energy, what would you recommend in those situations where mum's ready to pull her hair out because,
Mm.
he's jumping all over the couches and pulling everything out? Like, are you directing that energy into like a swing, or are you directing that energy to build something, or how does that look?
Yeah. So, well, it depends on Billy's age and developmental level, but Billy sounds like he needs to move. And
Yeah.
so, if you don't have the space outside, you need to find a place locally where
Mhm.
Billy can expend some of that energy and move his body, because he needs that. He needs that sensory information. Um, so, we can't ask Billy to do anything like his homework until he moves his body enough.
Can you say that again for the people in the back? And for
Yes.
the teachers, for any teachers
Kids,
possibly listening, please.
yes. Kids don't do well when they sit on their butts with their feet on the floor. They're not meant to do this. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry,
So,
it just I see it a lot with kids in schools, and it can be frustrating. And so it's important to know that this is a real thing. They're not trying to be naughty. They're not trying to be like, they're just trying to regulate themselves. So sorry,
yeah.
continue.
Absolutely. No. And the tragedy there is that we end up blaming the kids and labeling them as behavioral issues and that sort of thing. When, if we adjust how we view things and how we approach education,
Yeah.
giving kids need to move their bodies before they can learn. That
Yeah.
is scientific fact. So back to Billy. So if Billy can get on a swing or a bike or a jump rope or a bouncy ball or anything that helps him move his body, he is going to be so much better afterward, because if he's not able to move his body, his nervous system is in survival mode, and it looks differently for every kid. And in survival mode, kids can't do anything because their bodies are requiring them to stay in that state until it's resolved, right? Because he can't move his body is perceiving a threat, literally. We don't see that because our nervous systems might be very different than Billy's.
Yeah.
And so it's really good to tune into your kids and what triggers them, what they need to do to feel regulated and calm. And we need to give them that first.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm just thinking about, so many friends' kids. I'm thinking about my own kids. Like, are you, the way that you would do it, are you getting the kids to come home from school and being like, okay, cool, guys, this is what you've got to do. You've got like a visual schedule of all the things you want to do outside, and then we can come in and do what we're going to do. Is that how you would run it?
I would say it might be different in different households.
Yeah.
So what works with your household? I would recommend at some point in time to get kids outside, because our bodies, all 8 billion bodies on this planet, we need nature, because our bodies and our nervous systems are designed to be in collaboration with nature. They're designed to communicate with nature. And when we don't get it, that's when we see lots of these behaviors, so to speak, come up, because we're not giving what we need naturally. So I would say,
funny. Sorry.
Yeah, work it into your schedule. If it's a little bit here and a little bit there, like sprinkling it in, if that works for you, or if you need to spend an hour outside, whatever works for you. But I would say if you can get a minimum of 15 minutes per session outside, that is going to give you the benefits.
Yeah, right. It's interesting because when I take my son and when we go as a family to like hiking around Melbourne, I just see such a decrease in his stimming. You can almost physically see his shoulders lower, and just really step into, and especially more so when it's like a very green environment and there's lots of water, and it's just, you can physically see the change that comes up within him. And I'm always saying to parents, like, there are so many hikes around Melbourne that aren't difficult. Like they're very flat, it's not hard. And they just get to be back in nature. Now, granted, not always easy, and obviously you're not going every day.
Right.
So it's like I'm just going to duck out for an hour hike while you're at school or after school. And so I think that is an important part of being able to bring nature into your backyard if you can, with different things.
Yes,
So
absolutely. Natalie, I'd like to tag on to what you just said. It's important for us to remember as parents as well, when we get our kids outside, it's to help regulate their nervous system. But if we go out too, we need the regulation just as much as they do, because our nervous systems are in survival mode more often than we care to admit. So when we can get out in nature, and we could take our book outside, I would say leave the phones inside. For goodness sake, leave the phones inside. And get outside and really connect with your child, with yourself, with nature. And you will feel better, and you will be a better parent on the other side of that as well.
Yes, I think that is very true. And I speak to countless clients who are very much in that overwhelm, that state of fight or flight, and they themselves can't regulate. So then how can we expect as parents to regulate their children if we are dysregulated? Like it's this weird, we're going round and round in circles because no one seems to be regulated because everyone is dysregulated.
Right.
And there's no insight. So yeah, I love that. Go ahead. Are you going to say something?
Oh, I was going to say, funny enough, that's one of the things I teach parents about is reconnecting with your own senses so that you can connect with your children.
Yes. So important because
Yeah.
the reality is, Jenna, no one, like when I grew up, okay, granted, I am an 80s baby. So like, back in the day, they weren't talking about regulation, right? We didn't even know what that word meant. Our parents were like, just get outside, just go away, like leave me alone. And it's only now that we're really recognizing that mum sitting down with a cup of coffee, reading her book, that was her regulation. That was her way of just being able to go and be centered, right? Because we didn't have the dopamine of like this Instagram and the Facebook and all the other bits and pieces. So we need that regulation piece so much. It isn't something that's taught. I don't think it's actually being taught. We talk about the zones of regulation, but I don't think we're really taught as adults what that regulation looks like.
Right. Absolutely. Totally agree.
Yeah. So why is it important for children aged between 0 to 3 to really be involved in nature? And, regardless of whether they've got a diagnosis or not, why is it important to get out in nature?
It is. And I say, no matter the age from 0 to, 100, it's really important. But 0 to 3, there's such tremendous brain development happening. And if you do some research on it, you'll understand just how kids are literal sponges. And during 0 to 3, the right brain is growing and developing the fastest. And the right brain is looking for that sensory stimulation, especially from natural environments. And so if kids and infants can get outside and just be in the grass, toddle around, follow you around as you're doing your outside activities, it's feeding that right brain development. And the right brain development and the left brain, there's a whole brain science, and it's so fascinating. But I will say, infants, and especially neurodiverse infants and little guys, don't get outside as much as they need to.
And when you said little guys, are you talking about boys?
Both little guys and gals. Yep.
Yeah. No. I just
thought
you were specifically aiming at boys. So have you seen in your research, that there's been more issues with right brain function as, once phones were introduced? Like, are you seeing that there's more of that?
No, I'm not saying there's more of that. And I can't really answer that question with very much intelligence, but I will say that to have a strong foundation, right brain foundation, is really important. And so I would encourage your parents to look into that.
Yep.
And so, because there's a lot that's built on that foundation.
Got it.
And so we really want both hemispheres growing and developing in the way that they need to be. And when kids are out in nature, having multi-sensory experiences, no matter the age, there's a lot of conversation and connection and networking that happens between the hemispheres that really helps kids grow and develop in the way that they need to.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. So what can parents do to, is there one thing that you would say is really important for them to develop or to grow a sensory or a nature-filled backyard or a space in schools? Like, what would you say first of all, let's start with teachers. What would you say to teachers? Is there anything specific that you would say?
Yeah, I assume teachers in Australia have some of the same challenges that we do here in the US, where it's very, very structured, very inflexible. This is how you do it, and it's all about the testing and achieving these benchmarks. So I would advocate for rebel teachers doing things a little different, having like in the classroom, can you have some different seating? No matter what age it is, if kids can sit on the floor during the lesson, if kids can lay on their tummies during the lesson, if they can sit on different chairs or bouncy balls or whatever it is, And if a child is having a moment where their needs aren't being met, sensory needs aren't being met, it's okay to
Yeah.
pause and to help them get what they need
Yeah.
and then get back on track. It's okay to do things differently. Now, again, I would also say to teachers, get your kids outside, get yourself outside.
Yeah.
And it could be a little nook in your school space. Maybe you're inspired to build a school garden or an outdoor classroom. So many kids, future generations will benefit if you can gather a team and pick up that torch and do something like that. And again, it can be very simple. I've helped schools create gardens of all different sizes, and there's so much benefit. Because I'll tell you, the kids that struggle in class will become the leaders
Yeah.
when you take learning outside. It's a level playing field.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice for schools. And again, it's challenging to kind of go up against the powers that be, but it is worth it if you can get a team together. For parents, again, just start simple. If just in a simple, I mean, take what you're doing inside, take it outside.
Yeah.
If you can take meals outside, if you can take snacks outside, if you can take story time outside, that's a start. Again, put the phones away. The second would be create that cozy space for your kids.
Yeah.
And it could be a hammock, it could be the fort I mentioned, it could be anything. So just start small and just make a commitment to do it every day, because you will see improvements sometimes immediately, absolutely over time.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think we need more of that, especially when we're so, unfortunately, and I will definitely put my hand up and say, we're glued to the screens, right? Whether it's the TV, the phone, this, and for work, it's everything. We are
Oh,
raced around technology at the moment.
I know our life is so busy and overwhelming as parents. It's like I experience in my household doing the work that I do. So I absolutely can relate to that. And sometimes it's necessary to have just to get yourself a break.
Yes.
But when you feel the energy, take it outside.
Yeah. I love that.
And
I've
then
got so
when you make yeah, and if you can make it a habit, like I say, there's going to be, it'll have compounding benefits for
yeah.
everybody.
Perfect. And so where can people find you?
Mm. My website is nisfornatureplay.com. You
Mm-hmm.
can find me if you just search Facebook or Instagram for N is for Nature Play. I have a small YouTube platform with some clips of a summit I just put on. So you can find me all sorts of places online if you just look for N is for Nature Play.
Love that. And so I hear you told me that you have a lovely freebie to share with the audience. Is that right?
I do, yeah. So if your audience is interested in exploring what you can do with your backyard for your child, I'm offering a 30-minute conversation with me. Absolutely no pressure. We can just explore some ideas to help you get started with creating some natural play and learning in your backyard for your unique kiddo.
Amazing. I love that. I love that you can able to give them a little bit of insight around like you getting insight from the child and the mum or the dad, and then also giving some sort of reprieve. Like we can use this backyard as an extension of what this learning looks like, what this regulation looks like, how we can better show up for our kids, how our kids can show up better for themselves. So I really, really love that. Okay. It's time for rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What is the best piece of advice that you would give to a parent if you were designing a backyard space for them?
Uh, Follow your kids' example. Understand your kids and add more of what they love outside.
Yes. Okay, good. What is a must-have in any backyard?
The cozy space for sure.
Yes, yeah. What is a mantra or a quote that you live by?
Oh, yeah. Expand your comfort zone.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Expand your comfort zone. Yes. Yeah, because we do. We stay in our comfort zone all the time. And
Yes.
because it's
And we don't
easy.
get anywhere. We don't get anywhere. Yeah, we live unfulfilled lives when we don't expand our comfort zone.
Yes, yes, I love that. Where do you find your inspiration?
Oh, so many places. Nature. My own kids. I have twin girls who are 10 years old right now. Everywhere,
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah.
I have eyes for it.
Yes, okay. And do you have potentially a favorite book that you would like to share with the audience? It
Ooh,
doesn't necessarily need to be,
oh my
sensory
gosh.
backyards, but just something that you felt, transformed you or helped you or
Um, so I'm a big avid book reader. So one right now that I'm reading is The Gardener and the Carpenter.
oh, cool. What's
And
that about?
it's about parenting and the different approaches. If you're a carpenter parent, are you whittling and hammering at your child to create, or are you a gardener that tends to the garden that is your kid and allows them to grow and blossom in the way they're meant to?
Oh, I love that. That sounds
Check
so
it out.
beautiful. Yeah,
It's a
I
good
will
one.
grab the link off you and I will post it on socials and I'll put it in the show notes as well. Because all these resources are so important so that parents can go back to these books or go back to these things that sometimes, maybe you're watching this podcast and your child has, done something, you've got to go to attend to them. All of that information will be there so that you can go back and have a look at it later. Jenna, thank you so much for jumping on and having a chat with me today. I have thoroughly appreciated it.
Oh, same, Natalie. So much fun talking with you.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.